Hello and welcome to this Synchro training video. In this video, I'm going to show you how administrators can manage users using the new User Management and Role Management portal. First, click or hover over Administration and go to Manage Your Team. Now we're taking into the new User Management portal. The first page we look at is the Users page. So here we can see everyone that is a part of this particular project, and it gives us a quick way to just see what roles they have, their emails, their organization, their last sign-in date. You can also search for users. So if you search for, here I search for Caitlin, I can find her easily. This searches your first name, your last name, and your email. So by looking for John, I see both John Todd and Paul Johnson. So this gives me a quick way to search for users when I have a lot of users in my project. I can easily add users. So if I want to add a user that's internal to my organization, I can do that by just typing the name. So here I type the name of the user and I add him here as an admin. I can also add users that are outside my organization. So here I will just type arnar@claretconstruction.com. This tells me here this is a user outside your organization, and that's totally fine because we are just gonna add him here as a contributor. So here you can select the roles on the project, and now you hit save, and these two users have now been added to the project. From here, you can also add new permissions or new roles to this user. So I'm gonna select these two users right here, and I'm gonna assign them new roles. So here on the project, we can see that we have 3 different roles. Both of these have been assigned the admin role, but I'm going to add the project manager and the contributor role as well. And then I'll hit save. So now we can see that each of these has 3 different roles. So see all roles here, I click on that, and I get taken into that user profile. And this is an improvement as well, because now you can see details about this specific user. You can see their job title, their organization, their phone number, and their email. So all of that is available here in the user profile. And then you can see all the assigned roles. And all of these are clickable links, so you can get into the role to see the specifics of those permissions. Now that I go back, I can also just remove users. So now I can quickly remove this user from my project, and they're no longer there. And you can do this in bulk, or you can do this one by one. Obviously, you can sort things, you can filter. So if you want to sort and filter and see only users with a specific name, with specific roles, or a part of specific organizations, you can always do that, or you can sort them by organization or roles as well. Now, when I click on roles, this takes me into the role management portal. Here, I can see all the roles that I have created for this particular project, how many users have been assigned to this role, and then what the description of that role is. So if we, for example, look here at the contributor, we can see that it has been assigned to 2 users in the project. Now I can click on that. I can see who these assigned users are. I can remove them one by one, or I can choose to remove them all. And now we've updated that, and there are no users assigned to this content creator contributor role. If I go into the contributor, this is going to be the biggest change to the way that we've presented the permissions. Here in this role management page, we've taken the permissions that were service oriented and we've made them task based instead. So instead of it being on separate services that are not as easy to understand, we've taken this and put this into specific work items and specific work processes that users have to do in their everyday job. To start with, we can see here access. This is something that we are now introducing, and it's really it's to give you the ability to manage what level of access the users in your project have. So for example, here, we have given the contributor the control access, which means that they do have 4D review, field, and guest. That allows them to access SYNCHRO Control and SYNCHRO Field. If you give them 4D permissions, it additionally gives them access to 4D, both SYNCHRO Pro and SYNCHRO Modeler. We've simplified the administration significantly. So now the permissions here are, you can edit the project details, you can manage the configurations of the project. So that means create the settings and re-provision the project. So if you need to take a project and re-provision it by grabbing new forms from a template or new permissions or roles from a project template, you can do that through this permission right here. Adding and removing users has now been added here into one. And as you can see, every one of these permissions has a little information dialog that explains further what this is. This is ongoing, and we are working to make this better. So this is the absolute first release. Managing roles is exactly what we're doing here. It allows you to set up permissions on the roles. And then the last one here, set up for the project. This is the connection into SYNCHRO Pro and allows you to create projects within there to share with other participants. The document permissions are created here on a default for the entire project. This means that if I give read-write permissions to this role, any user with this role will have read-write access to the document section. However, I can overwrite this by going into the document section and into specific folders and set permissions there. And I'll show you that a little bit later in the video. But anything that you do there is going to override what you set up here. And the benefit of that is that here you have the default permissions, which for the most part, it can give you the ability to give access to specifications, design drawings, safety instructions, things that most users on the project would need, but further restrict specific things like contract information or details on payroll that you don't want to expose. And that means you can set those specific folders on no access or read only, however you want to set that up for those specific roles. Then here, this is a permission to give you the ability to manage these files and folders. So managing the folder permissions that I just mentioned, and we'll show a little bit later. One of the biggest changes in this new release is the flexibility that we're just giving you. The flexibility here means that you can add permissions to specific forms instead of having to set the permissions for the entire project. So now, instead of having to say, oh, a user has access to, or a role has access to all of these forms that are in the project, you can now set specifics. So in this case, for the contributor, we've said the contributor can create, comment, and view the daily logs. They have full access to observations. They have no access to RFIs, and they can create issues. And this allows you to manage your roles in a much more structured way. So if you bring external participants into the project, you can say they are just not allowed to see these specific forms. And that's easy. You can also decide that they can view, they can comment, however you want to set that up. And we have added here some details about each of these permission levels. The permission here gives you permissions to administer forms and workflows. And this is something that we're introducing in the next release, which will allow the administrators to create new forms and workflows for those specific forms. And that will be explained in a future video. Looking into the iModel, we can see that this particular user has one of the 4 permissions available for this iModel. They can read the iModel, which means that they can see iModels that have not been specifically gated for permission control. So if there's an iModel that is available to everyone in the project, they can read that model. But you can further restrict that if you want. You can restrict and say this specific iModel is not available to all users, and therefore that will override the permission here, just as we saw with the documents. Administrating the iModel is another permission here that allows you to create, configure, and remove any iModels that have been created in the project. And iModel quantities, both read and administrate, are specific permissions for the SYNCHRO modeler. So if you're using the SYNCHRO modeler desktop product, then these permissions are going to be required for that. We would suggest that you create roles for those in your project so that you can set up for VDC engineers or estimators that need to have access to SYNCHRO modeler, and this allows them to do just that. The last category that we have here is 4D scheduling. And what we're doing here is we are introducing now permissions directly from the SYNCHRO Pro desktop application into SYNCHRO Control. This is a part of a larger effort where we're connecting all of the SYNCHRO portfolio together, and getting 4D scheduling in here as a part of those permissions is incredibly important, because now we can set all the permissions for that shared project here instead of having to do that in SYNCHRO Pro or SWP. And these are all the permissions that we have added here. So now, as you've seen, we've simplified the process quite a bit. We've taken service level permissions and made them now into task-based permissions. The last thing I'll do here in the user management is to add a new role. I'm going to create a new role, and I'm going to call this here field staff. And I'm going to take the permissions from the contributor role and use that as a basis for my new role. As you can see here, we now have set up specific permissions for this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 4D or control and 4D review of this user, and I'm only going to give them field. Once we complete all the work required here, this will mean that the user is only going to be able to access the SYNCHRO project in the SYNCHRO field mobile application. They will not have access to SYNCHRO Control. They will not have access to 4D review or SYNCHRO 4D. And this allows you to really control how the users are going to access your projects. So now we have created this role, this new field staff role, and we can assign users to it. So here, I'm going to assign this role to users in the project. I'm going to select here Art Nicholson and Corey Johnson. So now these users have been added to this role, and you can see that here that the field staff role has now been assigned to 2 users. The last thing I wanted to show in this video is how to manage folder-specific permissions. You do that by going here into Documents, and then you select which folders you want to set permissions for. In this case, we're going to set permissions for the closeout documents. We do that by clicking here on More and Set Folder Access. This shows me the roles in my project. I'm going to give the admin read, write, delete permissions in here, the project manager read, write, and then we can select either read or just no permissions at all for the contributor. I'm going to give him read permissions. And now we just get a dialog letting us know that we are changing the permissions for this specific folder and overriding the ones that we set up for the entire project. Once the folder has been secured, an icon shows up to let us know that permissions for this specific folder have overridden the ones for the entire project. And this allows us to understand where do we have special permissions and where do we have the project level permissions. Makes it easier to understand where exactly permissions have been set for the specific folders. In this video, we've gone through the new user and role management portal that's available today in SYNCHRO Control. The portal allows administrators to access and manage all of their users, all of their roles, and set up any permissions that they want for their specific projects. It also allows them to create new roles and add new users easily with just a few clicks. We also saw how you can set up folder-specific permissions to allow you to override project-level settings and set up more detailed permissions on specific folders that you may not want to have everyone in the project access. We do hope that this video was useful to you. But if you do have any questions, please reach out to us by filling out a service request by clicking New Service Request in the top right corner under the question mark.